I've heard of expressions like, what was she wearing? Or she was asking for it. Or, you're a man. You're supposed to enjoy that, not make a fuss about it. These are statements and expressions that have become very common and very familiar and normalized in our society. This is what we call victim blaming. And today I'm going to talk about how victim blaming exacerbates sexual assault while denying accountability. Hi, I'm Daisy. So, what is this victim blaming? Victim blaming is when the victim of a crime is held responsible entirely or partially for the blame that befall them. It shifts the entire blame, the unwanted attention and criticism to the victim rather than the perpetrator. So, is victim blaming a new thing? No. Victim blaming has been there since very long ago. In medieval Europe, when a sexual assault happens, when rape happens, the victim was punished because they believed that it was the victim's fault. Because the victim was so beautiful, so attractive, it compelled the perpetrator to carry out the assault. The victim was the one to blame. And this has evolved in many ways, and we can still see it today. Now, then are people born with the mindset of victim blaming? And why are victims so accepting of all the blames that are thrown to them? Well, no, people are not born with the idea of victim blaming. However, people do grow up seeing, observing, and noticing how the society as a whole treat victims of sexual assault. When an assault happens, the society, the people, the public, and media are more eager to find out why the victim was assaulted, not why the perpetrator chose to assault the victim in the first place. The characters of the victim are debated and questioned. It has become normal to blame the victim and ignore the perpetrator. Victim blaming has been normalized. It can be seen in the littlest and subtlest of things, like how the society and school come together to tell a young girl who's barely 10 that, hey, you're a girl and you're gonna wear a skirt. But you know what? It can't be too revealing because it's distracting. Distracting to who? The 10-year-old boys? We don't know. It's just distracting. It's like indirectly and unconsciously implementing in their mind that as you grow older, as a girl, you're gonna be sexualized and objectified. Yes, you might not know what those means right now, but it's gonna be there forever. And it's your responsibility and it's your fault. And anything happens is still because you are you. It's your fault and your responsibility. And it also teaches the young boys that grow up with these girls that it's okay to sexualize and objectify the girls because the society has taught us that it's normal. It's not about being right or wrong, it's about being normal. Now, about the boys. But the society has taught boys one thing too, that they are supposed to grow up into strong young men, masculine and manly. They are not supposed to show emotions, show weakness. So this toxic masculinity gives birth to the idea that a man can't be sexually assaulted. Men can be sexually assaulted. Men are sexually assaulted. It's just that male victims don't come up to share their story because that would mean that they are weak. And if the victim is a male, then they are supposed to have enjoyed the sexual assault. Even if it was an assault and even if it was something they didn't want or consented to, if since they are male, they should have enjoyed anything that was sexual. And also the society has taught men that they are supposed to save the damsel in distress, not be the damsel in distress, which is insulting in its own very way. Now, all this compels the victim to just shut up and not speak up for themselves or not fight for justice. And because the victims are, rather than the crime that is going to scar them for a lifetime, the trauma it has caused, the victims are more afraid of the stigma that would come from the society when they come off to the world as victims. So they choose the one alternative they have besides being victims, being silent. And when victims go silent, the perpetrator walks scot-free without having to take any of the fault because they have been confirmed by the society that it was not your fault. It was the victim's fault. They shouldn't have provoked you. It's you have nothing to do with this. What you did was not even wrong. It was not a crime to begin with. So the perpetrator walks off. They walk off without even knowing that what they did was wrong because hey, the society said that it was not their fault. They see that their victims are the one to blame and they don't see what they did as wrong. If victim blaming has ever done one thing, it was give a reason and excuse so that the perpetrators can justify their own acts of crime, that it was not even a crime to begin with. If the society says so, then it's right. And this comes at the price of degrading, shaming, blaming, isolating the victims. It's high time people realize that the one at fault is not the victim, and you should make the victims realize that it's not their fault. It's the perpetrator's fault. Because victim blaming has, along the year, this toxic cycle has given birth to more silent victims, more sexual crimes, and more free perpetrators. The perpetrators need to take responsibility for their actions. It's them who did the wrong. Nobody chooses to be a victim. Victims should not be used as a slur to degrade someone who has faced such hard, unfortunate crimes. Victim blaming needs to stop. And yes, just by stopping victim blaming, there is no real guarantee that their sexual assault will stop immediately. But there needs to be a change, because this victim blaming, if it keeps on growing, then it's an excuse to the perpetrator to commit more crime. It becomes a habit, and habits are very hard to break. Victim blaming needs to stop. Thank you so much for being with me. Thank you.